This is the biggest mistake that I see people make when they're looking to plan to retire, or if they've been living in retirement and are looking to kind of stay within their plan. It's not their money. It's not their stock and bond allocation. It's not whether they decide to secure certain aspects of income. It's not about Roth conversions or saving taxes or protecting spouses. Those are all downstream challenges from this one mistake. And that mistake is not giving yourself the flexibility to adapt and change as circumstances dictate. And it's not your fault. The wealth management and planning industry is pitching a lot of certainty. Why? Because most people are taking a look and they're going on to, the interwebs, and they're looking for certainty on, all right, what do I do? How do I create a retirement paycheck? Should I do Roth conversions or not? How are taxes going to potentially sneak up on me after I retire? I'm 10 or 5 years away. What do I need to do at that time? And there's no shortage of high conviction opinions as to how to do that. Now, a lot of them are couched in, a significant amount of research and mathematics and analytics that lead to certain types of conclusions. But the one thing I'm going to say here very clearly is that math is not the only part of a decision when it comes to anything financial, especially when it comes to your retirement. That has to be one component to take a look at the direction of where you're heading. The other component that needs to be dealt with is the fact that most people with this type of transition, like retirement, one of the biggest life transitions they're ever going to have, they are not going to have it all figured out all at once. They're not. I've been doing this for close to 30 years. People that are looking to retire maybe a year or two away or just retired are doing very different things after their first couple or few years, and even, they're 10 or 15 years into retirement. It's all different and circumstantial. That's not to say that it's not important. So let me start with just the analysis side itself and where I think that has a big role as far as the decision-making process is concerned. Where it tends to help is it organizes thought. I tend to find that most people, when they at least come to me, they don't necessarily know exactly what they're capable of spending. They know what they have been spending. They know what their budget looks like, but they don't necessarily know what their life is going to look like in retirement. So one of the first exercises is just take a look at what is the savings capable of being able to provide, and is that close to where their current lifestyle is, or is it close to where it is they think that their lifestyle is going to be given the things that they've been considering doing? That's the first one. The second thing is taking a look at, what configuration of stocks and bonds is going to be the best. The other aspect of this, that kind of compounds on top of that is, once they know, like, what do I spend, then it just becomes, I don't know what my life necessarily is going to look like. The overwhelming majority of people that I've worked with don't know exactly what it is that they're going to be doing in retirement because they've never been retired before. Even the people who have a high level of conviction as to this is what I'm going to do and this is what I've been doing, I've been preparing for it, those people tend to be a bit more prepared. But I find without exception that there's always something that comes up that they didn't necessarily expect. That's like, what, now I think a little bit differently. Now I've done these things a little bit differently. And this is what I want to do going forward. Can I do that? That comes down to the adaptation and flexibility. And the thing that's overlooked most of the time, both by the wealth management industry and by people in general heading into retirement, is the ability and the necessity to adapt. So people have lived on planet Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. We've lived in pretty much every climate on this planet, not just lived and survived, but thrived. So we've been faced with tremendous existential crises and being able to make it through that. So that being said, it's going to be no different when you're looking at your own retirement. But to have a plan is one thing, but a plan is obsolete the moment that you hit save or print. The planning process is what is actually the most valuable. And that's an opportunity to be able to voice out loud what it is that you're looking to do. Because what I found over doing this for almost 30 years is that when people start talking about what they're looking to do, what it is that they started with, that initial concern, that kind of tip of the iceberg, can actually just go down to a scenario whereby, all right, it's a completely different thing. Because by hearing themselves speak out loud, they think differently. When somebody's listening, when they hear their own voice, they think differently about what it is that they're actually looking to accomplish. And I've seen this happen hundreds of times at this point, where people come in with a specific type of challenge. All right, I want to retire, or do I have the right money market? And then by the end of a conversation or a process, the real concern is, I don't want to be burdened. I don't know how to make these decisions. I don't trust a certain level of information that I've already received. and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to live my life in a certain way heading into this next type of phase. And that's a very different question from what do I need in stocks, bonds, and cash, and what return do I need, right? That's typically the one that the wealth management industry is geared to be able to solve, because that's the one they get paid most for, right? Percentage of assets under management, right? We'll manage it. We'll take away all of these concerns. We'll give you a certain degree of certainty behind it. And you know what? When it doesn't necessarily work out the way that we had thought, we'll have a whole list of excuses as to why it didn't do what a benchmark did or whatever else. And I don't want to sound too editorial on this, but I've been around it. I've seen how the sausage is made. My frustration, as you can tell, is that too much emphasis is placed on, what to do with stocks, bonds, and cash, because that's the engine of revenue growth for most wealth management firms, where the real issue for clients is understanding the trade-offs. For them to be able to kind of think out loud, not kind of think out loud, to be actually able to think out loud, both with themselves, with the people that matter most in their lives, and also potentially, if they're using an advisor, their advisor, to help really get to the bottom of what it is that they're looking to accomplish. And it starts with, what are you looking to protect right now? What are the things that you're not willing to compromise on? That's a great way to start. What are the things that you're unwilling to compromise on? Because that's a protection discussion. And in human nature, the first thing that we look to do is secure our own safety. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The first thing that human beings are going to look to do is ensure their survival. So it's the basics: food, shelter, things that are going to keep us alive, right? That's going to be the first response. What's important about money to you? Well, I need to pay my bills, live my life, buy food, put gas in the car, things of that nature, right? That's the first response to that kind of question. And it's natural. But the more important aspect is, as you move up that hierarchy, what is it that, how do you see yourself in this world? And then how does your money help you be able to express how you see yourself in this world? That's the deeper, more psychological aspect and the values-based aspect of a plan. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's going to be able to get there, but it really just starts with focusing on what's relevant. And I think a good relevant starting point is, what do you want to protect first? What are the things that you're unwilling to compromise on? And how do you protect those best? And then once you know that kind of the foundation of your financial house is in good order, and you know that you can survive, then you can start to thinking about how you want to thrive. And that requires a whole heck of a lot more introspection and thought. And that's not something that a financial planner is going to be able to hand to you to say, okay, well, now that you've done this, here's what you can do. No, that's something you have to figure out for yourself. What a planner can help you do is listen and understand, all right, this is the direction, and here are the guardrails that you can operate within to make sure that you have all of your basics covered in whatever way you feel most comfortable with. And there's a whole slew of choices as to how to do that. But it really opens up the possibility for you, the person, the client, to think about what your life, what you want your life to look like and how it is that you want to live it. Even though that may be very unclear, because most people haven't been retired before. You retire typically once. And until you've done it, you don't know. I mean, retirement is learned. And it's not a destination. It's not a place. It's not a number. It's a transition. And transitions take time. And everybody's transition is going to look a little bit different vis-a-vis, to your family member, to your neighbor, to your colleague. And so to kind of rush yourself is one of the mistakes I see people make, is to say, well, everybody expects me to have it figured out by this time. No, you don't need to. But from a planning perspective, you just need to know what your trade-offs look like. Okay, how do I protect myself? How do I get my basics covered? How do I survive? And then from there, all right, now that I know I can do survival plus more, because I've got a system in place to be able to give myself the best opportunity to do that, then, all right, how do you thrive? So the example that I can make is like the pioneers of the Old West, right? They took their covered wagons and their tools, and they cleared the land. They put in a lot of sweat equity, and they were able to, clear the land that they were granted and be able to live off of that. And so a lot of it in the early days was survival, but then they thrived. After they cleared the land, tended to it, had the crops, they had the risks, right? Drought, floods, things of that nature. The analogy, I guess I'm overdoing, but from that perspective, it's no different when it comes to your retirement. You are pioneering it in a certain way. Even though millions of people have gone through and into retirement, you're still pioneering it for yourself. And where guidance comes in is, all right, what plot do you choose? How much work do you want to do yourself? You want to cut down every tree? Take out every boulder, plow it yourself? Or do you want to be able to outsource that and delegate it to get it done faster? Or that's just maybe a skill that you can't or don't want to do? That's the question. What do I not want to compromise on? How is it that I want to move forward with doing these types of things? And so if you look at it from that perspective, it tends to change the shape of how conversations go with planners. It also changes the shape of how it is that you internalize and then use whatever data a model is able to produce to end up making a decision that you know and recognize isn't going to be necessarily perfect, but it puts you within a certain guardrail. And it minimizes the opportunities for surprise that can lead to disappointment and ultimately regret. And that at the end of the day is really what financial planning is all about.